Hello everyone, how are you doing? I'm doing well. I advise you to subscribe to the channel and put a like. Did you do? Great. Now I propose to pepper-vayute to the topic of the video we have today is not usual, namely, what's an opinion you have that you can only share anonymously? Story 1. This needs to be brought into the light for sure. Shame never helped anyone. It reinforces keeping the secret, which just hurts victims more. Everyone needs help, and that includes offenders. Yes, predatory people need harsh repercussions, but we're not helping anyone by brushing this under the rug until it's too late. Not everything is black and white. As someone that's been abused, do I hate the people that did that to me? Yes, but do I think they possibly could have been helped if they were able to admit and seek guidance before offending? Yes. Story 2. If police were properly funded, they would have the ability and the incentive to do real good. My county PD received grants several years ago to fund a community-based reboot of the whole department. They pay the officers more and offer way more benefits. They also have a ton of youth leadership programs that are summer camps or run during the school year. They do community events and volunteer and are more actively involved than any other county PD I've seen. They have a specialized crisis intervention team that responds in plain clothes to mental health emergencies. The cops are trained with a strong emphasis on active listening and communication as a means of de-escalation. Defunding the police would take away so many opportunities for community building. I understand the sentiment behind it, but the funds need to be redirected toward community development and better policing. Building a good relationship with the police is the first step, and it does so much in the end. I know many cops that have never had to pull their gun in the years they've been on the department. We are by far the best department in the entire state. A lot of young people love to throw out the phrase that all cops are terrible or evil at heart, and some do join for the wrong reasons. But a good department knows how to recognize its own strengths and work towards a better future for itself and the community. Story 3. The problem is that religious beliefs are a choice that people make, and gender isn't. In any case, I'm not sure what people mean when they say things like gender ideology being pushed in schools. Being gay or whatever isn't an ideology or lifestyle choice. It is what it is. People concerned about it being pushed are generally either misinformed about what actually happens in schools or have their own phobe stuff going on. Further, I think people are really confused about what occurs between ages 9 and 13. It's like people don't even remember being that age. In girls, it's really common for first crushes to occur around 4th grade ages 910. I've known girls who started their periods in 3rd grade. The average age of puberty onset is getting earlier. Interest in sexuality starts earlier than most people remember or want to acknowledge. Now, do I think kids need graphic explanations of adult concepts before they're developmentally ready? Of course not. Books like Gender Queer, for example, don't belong in elementary or middle school libraries. But a 4th grader can handle hearing a teacher say that there are lots of different kinds of people in the world, that people like different things, and that everyone has the right to be who they are as long as they're not hurting anyone else. The sad part is parents not liking that we teach those things. But that's what homeschooling or not reproducing is for. Story 4. Demonizing attraction to children differently than we demonize something like cancer is what has caused us so many issues. Who would ever tell anyone, even a therapist, that they have those thoughts? It's become too terrible of a stigma, so they repress it until they can't anymore, and then suddenly they're the devil. I wish I could go into a prison and beat up all the pedophiles, is a statement I really can never vibe with, but if I say anything other than hell yay, I would have a label slapped on me so fast. Story 5. My sister works with addicts. Let me tell you, she is one firm individual. When I asked why she wasn't as compassionate as I would have expected, she explained those types of people thrive on excuses. You have to be willing to cut them off as a last resort to help them by not enabling the behavior. She backed it by saying nobody has to be homeless. There's Shelter's Ashes programs available in every city. They typically don't have much engagement because they require waking up at certain times, contributing via work and being sober. Story 6. As a former drug user, I agree with the drug part when it's past the fun use stage. Never been homeless, so can weigh in there. But drugs of any type past caffeine is just a crutch for something somebody isn't willing to work on. I smoke. I've done a good panel of drugs. The smoking is a crutch for my depression and suicidal thoughts because I know it's harmful to me. It's a slow death I've chosen. The other substances were an escape route from reality. I don't want to do therapy about it. Having been around heavy alcoholics, various coke and shroom heads, and several weed smokers, the situation is their own making. Broke all the time, poor, can't hold down jobs, but they always get that fix somehow. I've been clean for almost 3 years, having done shit for less than a full year. Addicts are sad people, but at some point their actions are their responsibility, and that comes with its own consequences. Story 7. This isn't very anonymous. Some friends may see this. My liberal friends need to stop defending everything Islam, especially if they look down on Christianity. Let me be clear, I'm an atheist. I think most organized religion is disgusting. I detest Christianity and its lies, and I hate the people who act righteous only so they can hate but think they'll get into heaven. Somehow along the way, the very people who hate religion along with me are convinced Islam isn't as bad, or according to one person I know, more progressive than Christianity. That's bullshit. And if they truly believe that, then I invite them to go to any country that treats Islam like law. Funnily, most of those people are LGBT, and they seem to forget that a disgusting amount of people in the religion they feel white knight about would gladly see them dead for fucking someone with the same genitals as themselves. So, yeah. Story 8. Voluntary euthanasia should be legalized. And not just for elderly people on their deathbeds, but for anyone of any age, at the very least for adults age 21. Hear me out on this. If someone is in a situation when they feel like suicide is the only answer, losing a family member in a house fire, this said person should be heavily encouraged to try therapy first. But if therapy doesn't work, and this person makes the decision to be put to sleep, then they should be allowed to get themselves euthanized. They would obviously have to sign all sorts of legal documents and make a final declaration, etc. The point is that if someone genuinely wants to call it a life, we shouldn't force them to keep living. They also shouldn't have to go jump off a bridge and potentially screw up their own suicide. They should be allowed to effortlessly and painlessly die. Story 9. My sister, it kills me. She claims she's taking care of them since I have my own family and they live in another country. I get it. They're a bit older and sure, of course they'll need help eventually. But goddamn, in the meantime, they are fully functioning adults. Honestly, though, she just won't get her life together. No ambition. Indecisive as hell. Just living with mum-pop at age 43. I literally have no idea what she is going to do when they pass away. Mum has made it perfectly clear the house will be sold and sis is going to have to leave the country. She has been there illegally for years. I love my sister and I'd help her out in a pinch, but goddamn, get your shit together. Do something. Anything. Story 10. A lot of inmates were physically and/or sexually abused as kids. So they feel like it's their chance to get vengeance for their own experience by hurting or killing someone who did something similar to their own perpetrator. Doesn't usually help much. And many CSA offenders, probably most, were sexually abused themselves. I'd prefer CSA offenders getting much longer sentences, like at least triple, with a new system of reductions. The more treatment and therapy and research they engage in, the more reduction they get. As long as a board accepts their participation has been useful in terms of their own insight and rehabilitation, or of benefit in understanding such offenders, or both. I was raped as a toddler. I've been in a lot of support groups and done a lot of therapy over the last 30 years. Story 11. A woman very dear to me. Basically, a second mom had terminal cancer a few years ago and had an assisted suicide. She was a head nurse at the hospital and knew a lot about what she was going into, so she made the choice herself. Side note, her kid's last conversation with her was about who gets to keep her car. They were bickering and she just said, "Well, I can't wait to get the fuck out of here." Goodbye, Snoochie's mom. My mom was her best friend. She just went after that. If anyone you know is going to die and they know when, maybe have a nice, well-intended conversation about love, life, or happiness. Don't bicker over their belongings in front of them. Story 12. In the spirit of Op's question in this topic, I sometimes take a minute to consider how lucky I am to not have those urges. They must be horrible to live with. What a nightmare existence, maybe non-stop from beginning to end. Can't say that out loud for fear of being seen as not being sympathetic enough to the victims, and there's no volume loud enough to scream that I can feel sorry for both. In fact, I'm boring, with no kinks, cliché, no phobias or prejudices. Married, no drama, 2 kids with no problems. I mean, I didn't like the Star Wars sequels, but I'm like the luckiest guy on the planet for not having any of these hang-ups. Story 13. I think this should be more widely accepted. What you do with your own life is entirely up to you, provided you aren't harming anyone else. By extension, I think all drugs should be legal, because prohibition demonstrably doesn't work and drains far more resources than it would to provide users the means to use in a controlled environment. The decrease in deaths and hospitalizations due to odds, cut substances, and shared needles would also make way for additional programs to offer addicts counseling and rehabilitation, be it in or outpatient. Unfortunately, too many people see this as my tax dollars funding some junkies habit, and the result is, well, what we've got in the US now. Story 14. Adult Disney fanatics kinda weird me out. I know several families without children who dress up in matching Disney outfits and go as often as possible. I don't understand why they'd invest time to meet Disney characters, knowing full well it's just a sweaty adult inside a costume. Why they go every other weekend. Why they wear Mickey ears. Why they plan to get proposed there. Why they pay insane amounts of money on the food or attend meet-greet breakfasts and stand in crowded lines in the hot Florida sun. It's weird to me. I live by Disney and have gone, it's just okay. I also don't get the hype about Taylor Swift. Story 15. I love being a backup friend. You know that person you rarely talk to until you need a break from your friends, or your friends need a break from you, or you need a person to complain and vent and trum you a dump on? That's me. It is so peaceful and chill. I can do my thing most of the time, and people reach out to me when they need me. This controversial because the several Reddit posts about people feeling like shit, anxious, depressed, etc., about being the backup friend. It is so freeing for me since I can completely focus on enjoying my solo time. Story 16. Brain damage and tumors placing pressure on the brain can cause crazy alterations in human behavior. Gary Busey, today known as one of the most bizarre and eccentric actors in Hollywood, wasn't like he is now when he was young. He was in a car accident and suffered a severe head injury. People who knew him before that, especially his family, have attested to how wildly his entire personality changed after the accident. Basically, if you, or someone you know, begins randomly behaving in a severely uncharacteristic fashion, get a brain scan. There's a decent chance there may be something wrong causing the aberrant behavior. Story 17. I think it's morally wrong to have more than like 4 kids. Even if you have the money, it's impossible to give all of them the attention. Similarly, I think if you are not able to provide your child with a good life, under no circumstances should you have one. I come from a big poor Catholic family and have many relatives who have kids because they believe it's God's will. Watching these children grow up with parents who can barely provide for themselves, let alone a child, breaks my heart. Told her only have kids if you can take care of them. Story 18. I just had a conversation here on Reddit with a Muslim saying that it's fine to have sex with girls as long as they have started their period because they aren't children anymore, even after pointing out that girls can have their period at 10 or younger. They said Muhammad wasn't a pedophile because of this, and Western morality isn't always right. So yeah, I've got a lot of problems with Christianity, but pretty much no Christians are claiming what Catholic priests are doing is cool. It's crazy to see someone defend pedophilia because of their religion. Truly disgusting shit. Story 19. I'm really tired of hearing about autism. Specifically that everyone is autistic and B, that people will not stop telling me that I'm also autistic. I don't have the sensory processing issues. I don't have almost all of the symptoms of it. Medical professionals and parents of autistic children agree that I am not autistic. I'm just a blunt person, and while that might be another medical issue, it doesn't automatically mean autism. But people get so offended if I say I'm not, and they won't stop insisting on it, even if I ask them to stop. Story 20. Sure, but at some point you have to say okay, but don't do the bad thing and stop passing the buck. A guy who hits their children was likely hit by their father, and at some point you have to say you're a piece of shit for hitting your children instead of saying, well, he can't help it. He was raised with a societal disadvantage. There has to be a balance between recognizing the behavior and excusing the behavior. Negative behavior should still be discouraged, not just explained away and all culpability abandoned. Story 21. In the same way that genetic variations are responsible for people being born gay, lesbian, bisexual, asexual, or trans, it is likely that pedophilia is also a genetic variation. People don't want to believe this because pedophilia is disgusting, and that makes people innately want to distance themselves from it as much as possible. Despite believing this, I am a hypocrite in that I do believe in demonizing pedophilia and pedophiles, even if their desires are unchangeable and not their fault for being wired the way they are. Their condition is a danger to society. Story 22. Mentally ill-dependent kids shouldn't be brought to life. The same with the ones who have extreme illnesses that keep them from living a normal, enjoyable life. I've seen so many TikToks of moms with their agonizing kids on camera. It's an awful situation. Most of these kids aren't able to speak, walk, stand, or even breathe. So what are they going to do when they grow up and their parents pass? If these illnesses are detected during pregnancies, abortion should be the choice cause these kids are agonizing, not living. Story 23. People are getting fucking stupider and it's showing up in places like hospital workers. It's not a race thing. It's every class of new medical students, residents, nurses. They are getting progressively less read, less able to solve problems critically. They don't even read signs that say do not enter. We have a door that no one should be using. Daily people just don't read, don't pay attention. And the problem just keeps going and getting worse because no one can tell someone they are dumb and wrong. Story 24. I can't stand behind the prison justice thing at all. People who have intentionally destroyed countless lives taking part in things like mostly gangs, drugs, and violence acting high and mighty by torturing someone who most likely has severe mental problems and being praised for doing God's work or something. How do people get off on bonding over the complete disgusting levels of violence and the desire to hurt people many inmates have? I really don't see corrections officers allowing someone to be brutally murdered as a joyous event. Story 25. Conservative ideology as in what's in common practice, or the general idea of valuing stability over progress? I suppose it's a moot point when the latter doesn't really exist in public discourse, but I think in an ideal system an actual conservative bloc that wants to stick to, if it ain't broke don't fix, it could be a valuable counterpoint to progressive excitement. Again, I'm not in any way insinuating we have any major ideology like that, just asking because of the phrase on its face. Well, and that's all we have. I hope you liked the theme of this video. I ask you to support the channel with a like, subscribe, and kalakolchikam. Well, and leave your comments. I will be glad to read them.